Hello and welcome to your 12th Java programming tutorial. In this tutorial, I am going to talk about having multiple methods in one class. And this will come in handy if you want to run a piece of code, if you want to have like a method that will do a bunch of stuff to a number, or a method that will be ran over and over again. It can just have endless possibilities. So suppose in our program we have a bunch of integers, and we want them all to be positive. And so we could do an import and import some stuff that would allow you to use abs, which is a method that allows for an absolute value. But I think we should make a method ourselves that we can access inside this to give us the absolute value of that number. So outside of our main public static void thing, we're going to go public, because we want to be able to be used in here. You can also put private as the alternative, which I actually think would still also work, but private has to do if it's in a different class than as the main class. And here we're going to put static. The reason we're putting static is because it's in the same class as this. Static has other uses, but you basically need it if it's going to be in the same class as main. And you're going to type in, I'm going to type in int, because that's what it returns. That basically treats it, it basically says this method is going to give an integer as your answer. And I'm going to call my method abs, which sounds, never mind. So in here, you're going to put, what do you want to give the method to have it spit back the answer? Well, we want to give it an integer, and then it'll spit back the absolute value of it. So let's say we're going to call that integer a. So that is basically that. So right now we're getting an error, and that's because it doesn't yet return an integer. So the way to make it return an integer is we type return, like for example, if we type return 1, that returns the number 1, and it's all good because it returns an integer. But we want to have it return something that has to do with this variable. So what we're going to have is an if-else statement that it's going to tell you if A is negative, we're going to do something to it, and if it's not, let's not do anything to it. So we're going to have an if and else. So it's if, we're going to say if A is less than 0, then return negative A. And else, we just want to return A. So what this does is it takes our variable, and if it's less than 0, basically says the answer to this is whatever your number was, negative. And if it's more than or equal to 0, it says your number is the answer to this question. And you can also have more complex stuff. You could create a new variable. So you could say b equal, you can say int b equals negative a, and then instead of saying negative a, you could say b here. You can create variables, do all the stuff you can do up here inside this method. Now, right now it's going to run the main, and it doesn't automatically run this method, so you have to call it. So what we're going to do is we are going to make first an array of integers we want to test. So int, we'll call our array Henry equals new. I'm just going to declare some integers. I'm going to call -4, 7, -5. -5, 7, -5. -2, 9. So now we've got a bunch of integers. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make another array of integers that is going to have a length equal to this. So I'm going to call it Henry2. The way you do that is using the .length category. So we type in Henry2 here, and we want it equals a new integer array. And what we're going to put in here is we are going to put in the number, the length we want it to be. We want its length to be this. We could put in a 5, and that would work for this program. But we want it to be able to change this, and we don't have to go into this. So there's a cool thing you can do, which equals Henry dot length. This returns the length of this. There's 5 integers in here. It'll return 5. If we had another one, now the length is 6. So Henry 2 will have an equal length to our first one. Now I'm going to make a for loop. So we're going to have an integer I, because that's my favorite integer for for loops. And so long as I is less than Henry dot length, then I want I to go up. So this is a basic program that allows you to go Henry, and then if you put an I, and it will put an I, and this is basically, it'll do it for each one of these. So this is something you will see a lot, actually. So what we're going to do is Henry with the index, Henry 2 with the index of I. And now we're going to get to the calling function. We're going to set it equal to the function that has the thing you put into it is going to be the Henry array. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in the name of our function, as you can see is abs and abs. Then you need to type parentheses. And in the parentheses, if you put in an integer here, you need to put an integer here. And for our integer, we are going to put Henry with the same index, which is I. And now to make life easier, I'm just going to use the same same for loop. Sorry, my spelling's messed up. Dot print line. I'm going to use the same for loop to print out the answers. So Henry 2 at the index I, which will equal Henry 1 at the index I, but the absolute value of that, which will run it and take Henry 1 now becomes this integer A, and then it does all this, and then it returns, and whatever it returns is the answer to this. That's what it is. It is the equivalent of that. So now if we run that and run it, it will give you the list of all my integers, except none of them have a negative sign here. If we delete this by cutting it out, Command X, and we run that now, it doesn't do it because that's important. But if we just have it equal to Henry I, for example, so it doesn't change it at all, as you can see if we run that, now it gives you some negative numbers, because you need to take the method abs and run it using that variable. So that's it for this tutorial. This is actually a pretty long tutorial, and I will see you in the next tutorial. So see you then.